Sure. Okay. Share screen. Okay. I wonder if you can hear me. I hope you can hear me. Oh. Let's see. Okay, thank you very much. So, as you have seen, I've written something in the chat explaining how I would like to try to use the video this time. So, any one of you can start by making oneself visible on the video. That person will stay for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then another person can be the next person to appear on the video. Someone pointed out that if we all have the video, then it will affect adversely the audio. But I think if we have one person, one more participant at a time with video, that is great. So yes, please read the instructions on the chat. And wait, I'm sorry, Angelica, I will stop your video now. Hi, nice to see you. Yes, I will. So since Yi-Chang was the first one to be on the video, he will be the first one to be on the video, and then maybe Angelica, you can join on the video after that. So for the time being, maybe I will stop your video and then you can start it again after. When you see that Yi-Chang disappears, you can appear. So you see that I wrote some guidelines on the chat. This is because otherwise it seems it affects the audio. So nice to see you, and I will see you in a few minutes as long as Yi-Chang disappears. Okay, there's a few more.
The video will not influence the audio as long as you mute yourself.
And now I will also mute everyone to avoid echoes. And then you can always unmute yourselves if you have something urgent that you want to say. Okay, maybe I will wait just, it's 5, exactly 5. Let me wait a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, maybe I will repeat some of the things that I said yesterday, just about what text this is. This is the Jnana Sara Samuchaya, the compendium of the essence of awareness of Āryadeva. Āryadeva being one of the main, well, maybe the main disciple of Nagarjuna that we know of. Modern scholars consider this to be by the second Āryadeva, etc. But of course, for the tradition, these are the same person, because both Nagarjuna and Āryadeva are regarded to be as Mahasiddhas. And this is a very influential text. As I mentioned, this was followed as a kind of a general framework to present Buddhist philosophy in India and Tibet. And this is true of both Buddhists and non-Buddhists. Meaning that when we have some kind of presentation of a Buddhist position in later compendia in India, even by the non-Buddhists, they will follow this kind of fourfold Siddhanta system outlined in the verses that we have been reading. So this may give you some idea of how important this text is. Today we are going to study the Sautrāntika view. Last time we went through the Vaibhashika view. These two views are closely related. Both of them are considered to be Shravaka views, and many of the positions as presented by the later tradition of both Vaibhashika and Sautrāntika actually are based on the same text, namely the Abhidharma Kosha and the Bhashya. So the Abhidharma Kosha of Vasubandhu presents the Kashmira Vaibhashika view in the root verses. And it presents the very often Sautrāntika-like positions in the commentary, sometimes refuting the claims of the Vaibhashika. Oops, Vivek is having problems, I see. He's coming and going. I hope that this time he doesn't have problems. An iPhone is joining, okay. So today we will study the Sautrāntika view and reflecting this feature of the Abhidharma Kosha Bhashya, the commentary on the Abhidharma Kosha, we can understand much of the Sautrāntika view as a criticism of certain positions of the Vaibhashika. That's also one reason why it is so convenient to first study the Vaibhashika view, and then we just make a few, so to speak, corrections, and there we have the Sautrāntika view. But that's a little bit how it works for all these systems, where the Madhyamaka is presented as the highest view. It's just a refinement of our jnana, of our lack of attachment to objects, in a way. So now, to begin with, I'm going to chant something, and feel free to join. I'll chant everything 3 times, especially if you already know these verses. Namastasmai bhagavate rhate samyak sambuddhaya. Namastasmai bhagavate rhate samyak sambuddhaya. Namastasmai bhagavate rhate samyak sambuddhaya. Namo Manjushri Kumara Bhutaya. Namo Manjushri Kumara Bhutaya. Namo Manjushri Kumara Bhutaya. Namo Buddhaya Gurave. Namo Dharmaya Taine. Namah Sanghaya Mahate. Tribhyopi Satatam Namaha. Namo Buddhaya Gurave. Namo Dharmaya Taine. Namah Sanghaya Mahate. Tribhyopi Satatam Namaha. Namo Buddhaya Gurave. Namo Dharmaya Taine. Namah Sanghaya Mahate. Tribhyopi Satatam Namaha. Sarva Samskara Anityaha. Sarva Samskara Dukkhaha. Sarva Dharma Anatmanaha. Shantam Nirvanam. Sarva Samskara Anityaha. Sarva Samskara Dukkhaha. Sarva Dharma Anatmanaha. Shantam Nirvanam. Sarva Samskara Anityaha. Sarva Samskara Dukkhaha. Sarva Dharma Anatmanaha. Shantam Nirvanam. So these are the 4 seals of a Buddhist view. And yesterday we saw that as for the Vaibhashika tradition, these statements have to be taken in a somewhat qualified manner, in the sense that not everything is impermanent, but only those entities which are produced by causes and conditions and which function as causes and conditions. Not all among these entities that are impermanent are suffering, but strictly speaking, only the ones which are sahasrava, with outflows, which means that the mental afflictions can stick to them. All the entities are without self. This is accepted for all of them without any qualifier. In the case of a Sautrāntika, actually all entities, without exception, are impermanent if they're real. So in other words, all real entities are impermanent, all real entities are suffering, all dharmas are devoid of self, and again, shantam nirvana. Nirvana is peaceful. So I hope that this will help when we go into the details of the Sautrāntika position. Once again, let me briefly repeat some things that I said yesterday. The Jnanasara Samuccaya has a lot to do with distinguishing consciousness from awareness. Consciousness is the cognition of an object, and awareness is free from objects, is free from any attachment to objects. This is according to a distinction expressed in the Sutra of a Descent into Lanka, the Lankavatara Sutra. Sorry, some people around. Okay. So verse number 20, the first of this series of verses on the Buddhist view, just tells us that we can understand the Buddhist Dharma in accordance with four paths, four different philosophical views, starting with Vaibhashika. And these four are Vaibhashika, Sautrāntika, Yogacara, and Madhyamaka. The Vaibhashika view is based on the Abhidharma of the Sarvastivada, which consists of 7 treatises considered by them to be taught by the Buddha, and especially on a commentary on one of them called Mahavibhasha. So from Vibhasha, we have Vaibhashika. The first verse of the Vaibhashika told us that they believe in some unproduced permanent entities, that they believe that what is dependently a reason happens to be momentary, and everything is without a self and without a creator. Then I briefly discussed the Panchavastus, and these turn out to be very useful for us when we discuss the Sautrāntika, as you will see. So the first class of entities accepted by Vaibhashika is Rupa, form or materiality, which is made of 2 types of Rupa, basically, Mahabhutani and Mahabhutani Upadaya, so the 4 great elements, and that which depends on the 4 great elements. Among that which depends on the 4 great elements, there is a type of form called avignapti, which means non-cognizable form. And this has to do with how they explain also karmic continuities. All types of rupa, without exception, is made of anu or paramanu, which do not have extension in themselves, but collect together to give rise to the perception of extended entities, which is just our concept. Then we have chitta, and chitta is the basic mind, which is the perception of a mere object, not the features, but just the mere object. This mind is always accompanied by mental states, which operate together with the mind in terms of their basis, their object, the way in which they look like, the configuration, the time at which they occur, and the number. So if there is one moment of mind, there is one moment of feeling, for example. Then there is the assembled factor disassociated from the mind. This is a special category which is meant to explain certain types of causal processes. and is unique to the Vaibhashika. And then we have the asamskrita, the non-produced dharmas, which are permanent dharmas. And these are space and two types of cessation. And as we have seen, some Vaibhashikas even consider dependent arising itself to be a permanent dharma in its own right. The Vaibhashikas believe that the mind directly perceives the object. So the mind itself is like a clear crystal. It doesn't have any configuration or aspect. It doesn't appear in any way whatsoever. The configuration pertains to the object, to the way the object is laid out, to the way these paramanus, these ultimate partless parts, are laid out together, and the mind directly perceives that. So this is their theory of cognition, which is important because it stresses a very direct relationship between the mind and its outer object. And as we will see, this is maybe the rationale, or one of them, in accordance to which these systems are graded from the Vaibhashika up to the Madhyamaka. Now we will start with Sautrāntika. So why are they called Sautrāntika? Because they follow the Sutranta. So Sutranta is the same as Sutra. Okay. Hello. Yes. Maybe ENGBP. You can join, but now I will have to do this, because please read the chat. There is one guideline for the video. So there is this statement, which actually is one of the many statements in which they say that they rely on the sutras, but they take the sutras as their proof, their pramana, because instead of the shastras, so instead of these 7 shastras of the Sarvastivada, because the Buddha himself said that you should have the sutrantas as your reliance, or as your pratisharana. So this is their idea. Okay, now maybe we can change the person on the video. I see, oh, another person has come. Is that okay? Maybe Yi-chan, you can disappear and we can let somebody else appear. So some other person can now pop up on the screen, maybe Angelica, because she had popped up for a second. So Angelica or Ted, yes, okay. Ted, do you want to be on the screen? Okay, that's fine. But then show us your face. It's more interesting. Now we are only seeing some wood. Ted? Okay, well, let's look at Ted for a while. No, Ted disappeared. So somebody else, maybe Angelica, you can appear now.
Okay, I think.
Now, this is the first verse. This verse already tells us 2 important things. One is the theory of cognition, and this is the first half of the verse. And one is something about ontology. Oh, okay. Yes, sorry, Angelica. Let me see. There. Yes, thank you. That disappeared completely. So the first one says, oh, Chepa. Hi, Chepa. So I will read it twice and then I will explain it. Sakarat-jnana janaka drashyanendriyagocharaha vandhya-suta-samam vyoma nirodha vyoma-sannibhau. Sakarat-jnana janaka drashyanendriyagocharaha vandhya-suta-samam vyoma nirodha vyoma-sannibhau. Now, if we split the sandhi, sa, akara, jnana janakaha drishyaha na indriya gocharaha vandhya suta samam vyoma nirodhau vyoma sannibhau. Actually, let me divide this as well, sorry. What does this mean? We have two main points here that are being made, and we can divide it into 3 sentences. The first sentence is this, the second sentence is this, and the third sentence is the last quarter of the verse. So, Indriya Gocharaha. Indriya Gocharaha means the things which are the scope within the range of the sense faculties. So, for example, in the case of Chakshuhu, our Gochara would be visible form, Rupa. So, this Rupa, this visible form, which is made of a collection of momentary atoms, Paramanu, they are Jnana Janakaha, they generate cognition. So they are the causes of cognition. What kind of cognition? A cognition which is sa akara. Now this is an important point and an important distinction when compared to the Vaibhashika position. Cognition has got aspects. Cognition has got configurations. So if the object happens to be a patch of blue, the cognition will appear as a patch of blue. And they're not drishyaha. They are not in themselves actually visible. So what it means is that cognition is generated by its outer object, but it doesn't really directly see it. And this is due to momentariness. The moment the object of cognition is there, the cognition is not yet there. The next moment, the cognition arises as its effect. So because of this chronological displacement, because of this sequence, the object and the cognition do not have such a direct relationship of literal direct perception. And the Sautrāntikas sometimes are called Bāhyartha Anumeyavadin, those who uphold that the outer object is to be inferred rather than to be directly perceived. So now, if we go back for a moment to the Vaibhashika view, you can see that the first part of verse 22 said Akshajadhir Anakara. So the cognition, which is born from the sense faculties, doesn't have any configuration. Sakshat Vedanusantrayam, and it directly perceives the collection of atoms, of paramanus. So you can see here a difference between these two systems, and this difference is quite important. This also implies that actually the mind is always aware of itself. What happens is that one moment of cognition is perceiving itself with a configuration which matches, which is coordinated with, which is in harmony with the object that gave rise to it. That is why we can say that we perceived one thing rather than another. So I have actually made some odd drawings that I hope nevertheless can be useful. Now, this is the better one of my 2 drawings. And it's about how to understand this relationship between the object of cognition and the moment of cognition that it gives rise to. So this arrow here, this arrow is actually indicating a cause and effect relationship. So this object, which is a collection of paramanus, is the cause for this cognition. So this all yellow circle represents the moment of cognition. This moment of cognition arises with the same configuration as the object. So you see, this configuration resembles the object that caused it. This is the power of the object. The object is not just one of the causes for the mind to arise, it's also the cause which is capable of determining how the mind is going to arise, how that mind is going to look like, if you wish. Whether it's going to look like a table, whether it's going to look like a sound, whether it's going to look like a smell, etc., etc. And you see, this line indicates that there is a temporal gap. So what it means is that when this cognition arises, this object actually has already ceased, because the object lasts only one moment. So what it means is that this mind is perceiving itself with the configuration of the object, but is not really directly perceiving the object that caused it. So this is my first drawing. Now, if we want to zoom out and look at the whole situation, rather than just these two, one moment of object and one moment of cognition, we can look at this second, maybe slightly uglier drawing. So this part, 1-1, was the part that we had zoomed in. The point that I want to make with this more complicated drawing is that actually, first of all, the mind can take many different objects. So you see the one here as a star is an object that was the object of the mind causing the moment of cognition many moments ago. Now, then the mind was caused by another object, and then it changed its configuration. And then the mind starts being caused by the continuum of this object. So you see, moment number one of this object causes moment number one of the mind. Then moment number two of the object arises. That is simultaneous with the mind, but the mind is not perceiving it. It is not caused by that simultaneous moment of the object. And moment number two is going to cause moment number two of the mind, and so on and so forth. And this continuum is the mental continuum of a person, this yellow mental continuum. And these are all its possible objects. It depends from where attention is going to go. So I hope that this gives you an idea of why for the Sautrāntika, we don't really perceive the object. It's just that the mind is always perceiving itself. And it is caused by the object, and we infer the existence of the object due to that. So this is represented by Sākara Jnana Janaka Drishya Nendriya Gocharaha. Okay, now maybe I'm going to change the person who's going to appear. Let me see. If I find Ted. Oh, yes. I will make Ted reappear. Can Ted appear? No. Ted cannot appear. Peck, let's say if Peck can appear. No. Okay, yes, Peck is appearing. Hi, Peck. So, okay, I'm just changing so that we have variety and equal opportunity. Okay, Vandya Sutta Samam Vyoma, that's the next sentence, actually, just this much. That means that Vyoma is a synonym of Akasha, of space. So, Ka, Gagana, Vyoma, Akasha was same. So, Vyoma is Vandya Sutta Samam. Samam is the same as Sutta, the son of Vandya, a barren woman. So, this example is well chosen because it indicates that things which do not have the proper causes and conditions to arise are non-existent. And it points to the fact that for the Sautrāntika, whatever exists is in a cause and effect relationship. So to exist, We know that things exist. We know that things exist because of their effects, basically. They give rise to many different types of effects, and this is how we ascertain the existence of different entities. And this is also how we decide that they are momentary, because change is what allows for causality. Okay, now I will, let me see, who is, I do not know who this is, but let's see if this person can appear. Yes, Chepal, hi Chepal. So this particular way of establishing that the sky doesn't exist indicates the relationship between, implicitly indicates the relationship between existence and causality, which is of paramount importance in the Sautrāntika tradition. There is the famous Sattva-anumana, the inference based on existence to prove momentariness on the part of Dharmakirti, which goes along those lines of having efficacy. What exists has to have efficacy, has to have an effect, and therefore it needs to be momentary. And then Nirodha, and this refers to the two types of Nirodha that we had studied as being unproduced according to the Vaibhashika. Vyoma Sannibhav, they're just like the sky, which means they don't exist. They're only Prajñapti-sat. They only exist as names, as designations. So for example, when a certain continuum ceases, we say that we call that cessation, but it's not that cessation is referring to a really existing entity. Rather, cessation is a name for what happens at a certain point to a certain process. And therefore, the Sautrāntika reject the possibility that any of the three asamskritas could be anything more than just names. So they're all names for absences of something that would otherwise really be there. So this is the meaning of these two halves of the verse. So now let me read it again. Sakara jnana janaka drishyani gocharaha vandhya sutasamam vyoma nirodhav vyoma sannibhav. Okay. Next one. Samskara najada santi traikalyanugamo nacha asat apradigham rupam iti Sautrāntika viduh. So I should read it twice. Samskara najada santi traikalyanugamo nacha asad apratigham rupam iti Sautrāntika viduh. So if we split the sandhi, samskaraha na jadaha santi. Traikalya anugamaha na cha asat apratigham rupam iti Sautrāntika viduh. Asat also I can split. So what does it mean? There's 3 points that are made here. The first one is that they don't accept the chitta viprayukta samskaras. So here the word samskara is used in the more restricted sense of the samskara skanda, if you wish. So there are no samskaras which are jada, which are inert. In other words, the samskara skanda does not include the chitta viprayukta samskaras, these samskaras which are disassociated from the mind. These all the samskaras are just chaitas, so they do not accept the last of the 5 realities and the 4th of the 5 realities of the Vaibhashika. according to the Sautrāntika, we can take those samskaras one by one. Those chitta viprayukta samskaras, those samskaras disassociated from the mind, and show that they are only names for processes or that they refer to other entities. So, for example, the Vaibhashikas believe that names, words, exist as something distinct from what is mental, what is sentient, or what is material. When we use a sound, we are just bringing into existence this other entity called a name, and that entity then will coordinate with a certain meaning in order for us to express something or think of something. But actually, the Sautrāntika say that no, a name is only a collection of sounds that we have agreed is going to be used to refer to something. That's all we need in order to explain how speech works. So this is, for example, how we are going to refute the idea of Naman being, or Venamakaya being a type of entity distinct from Naman, distinct from Rupa. So that's just one example. They actually refute them one by one. Second point, they don't accept trikalya. So the word trikalya comes from trikala, the 3 times. So what it means is they don't accept that the entities exist in the 3 times. They don't accept that past entities or future entities exist. They believe that all that exists is the present moment. They believe that there's only one moment, it's the present moment. And we can say that past dharmas existed and future dharmas will exist, but we cannot say that they do exist now. So that's the meaning of this quarter of a verse. Then, asat apratigham rupam. This means that they do not accept non-cognizable form. This special category of form which is meant to explain causal continuities in the Vaibhashika philosophy. They explain karma in terms of seeds and subtle imprints, bija and vasana. So this is the idea that many of us are more familiar with when thinking about karma, the idea of seeds and imprints on karma, which are somehow brought by the mental continuum, brought forward by the moments of mind. And this is how we will explain karma. Iti Sautrāntika viduhu means this is how the Sautrāntikas understand things. So this is mostly, as you can see, most of this presentation of the Sautrāntika is in terms of their criticism or their rejection of certain Vaibhashika categories. So that's why it is quite important to be familiar with how the Vaibhashika system works to understand the Sautrāntika. So in another way, we can say that the Sautrāntika have a very strict and precise way to decide that something exists. Something exists if it produces effects, and therefore, by using that very clear parameter, they can get rid of lots of other entities that are accepted by the Vaibhashika just on the basis of the fact that they do not give effects. If you wish, we can also understand in this way. Now let me change the video person.
May I ask a question?
Teaching has reappeared automatically.
May I ask a question?
Okay, that's fine, but I cannot hear you. You're not muted, but I can't hear. That's okay.
May I ask a question?
You have a question?
Yes, what's the meaning of jada?
I cannot hear you though, so could you write it on the chat?
What's the meaning of jada?
Jada, jada.
Mm.
Did you say jada?
Yes.
Yeah, he's saying jada, yeah.
What's the meaning of jadaha? Jada means dull or inert, insentient, non-sentient. So here it indicates the opposite of nama, which is a type of sentient, is prakasha, it's luminous. it can cognize something. So what it means is there's not kind of samskaras that are not part of consciousness, or more specifically, they're not chaitas. All the samskaras in samskara skandhas are mental states. The Vaibhashikas believed that there was this special class which was neither materiality nor part of consciousness. But the Sautrāntikas do not believe that. They think that all the samskaras in samskara skandha, in the fourth aggregate, all of them are mental states. So they reject all of the jada samskara. Yeah?
All the assembled factors are mental factors?
I wish I could hear you.
Sorry, maybe I can ask next time. Thank you.
Okay, I cannot hear you, sorry. If there's something, please write it, because I can't hear you. But maybe now I saw that you muted yourself, so I will stop the video and make someone else pop up. Let's see. Okay. Vidya. Let's see if Vidya appears. So we actually have completed the 2 verses, but there's a few other things that I want to say. Not all the assembled factors, Ichan. Not all the assembled factors. So Ichan asked whether all the assembled factors are mental. No, all the assembled factors in the more restricted sense of the samskara skandha, the 4th aggregate. Because rupa, things like a table, are also made of samskaras in the broader sense of all impermanent entities. But when we use samskara in the more restricted sense of what falls within the aggregate of assembled factors, in this more restricted sense, then all those are all chaitas. So there is no other special category as the Vaibhashika accept. Okay, so in fact, this is what I've written here. When it is said that there are no inert assembled factors, what is meant is that assembled factors disassociated from the mind are not accepted, except as concepts describing certain processes. When it is said that non-obstructing form is non-existent, this refers to the non-cognizable form, this special type of form which is created by karmically relevant activities and which is considered to be non-obstructive by the Vaibhashika. It's different from other form in that respect. So the Sautrāntikas don't believe in that and rather explain the continuity of karma in terms of seeds and imprints. So I hope that now the meaning of this verse is somewhat clear. Let me read it again. Samskara najada santi traikalyānugamo naca asadna pradiham rūpam iti Sautrāntika viduhu. Okay, so in order to understand Sautrāntika again by way of difference, let me once again go to the Panchavastu so that I can point out what are the things that they do not really accept. So when it comes to Rupa, they accept this, but they don't accept this. So this part of Rupa they don't accept. So they accept Rupa in similar terms as the Vaibhashikas do, including the idea that there are paramanus, partless parts, but they don't accept this part. They accept Chitta, they accept Chaita, although sometimes some of them discuss whether they could be considered just special states of Chitta. That idea is also present. And they don't accept the next category, this one, Chitta Viprayukta Samskara, this special category of the Vaibhashika of certain types of samskaras which are neither part of Rupa nor are they part of Nama. So that they don't accept. what exists is nama and rupa, that's all. Name and form in the sense of sentient and materiality. And they don't accept the asamskrita, the unproduced, because they don't accept anything as being permanent and as not being within a causal sequence, as working as a cause or and being an effect of something else. So they don't accept that everything could exist if it is not dependently a reason. And the other key point of the Sautrāntika view, which is partly, probably actually the main reason why they are taken to be higher than the Vaibhashika, one of the points is that for them, we don't really have that direct relationship, direct perception of the outer object. Direct perception, strictly speaking, is the direct perception of the mind seeing itself appearing in one or another way. The way the mind is appearing is determined by the object that causes the mind, but because of momentariness, when the mind appears, the object is not there anymore. So you can see that this easily goes towards the mind-only view, in the sense that once we discard the idea that the inference about the outer object is correct, once we in fact show that the outer object doesn't make much sense in the terms of logic, then, and once we can show that just the mind, the continuum of the mind is sufficient to explain all our experiences as well as the occurrence of both samsara and nirvana, then we are in the mind-only view. So you can see that the Sautrāntika already go a little bit in that direction, and they accept self-awareness, which is very important for the Yogacara view. The Sautrāntikas generally are considered to be a Shravaka school, so a non-Mahayana school. However, Bodhibhadra, commenting upon this, points out that they do accept some Mahayana sutras, including the Bhadrachari Pranidhana, the famous aspiration of good conduct, which is at the end of the Gandhavyuha Sutra, and also some other Mahayana sutras. And Maitripa actually is of the view that the Sautrāntika is already suitable to practice Mahayana, but with one restriction. It is not sufficient as a view to be the basis of the practice of secret mantra. It is, however, an adequate view to practice the Paramitanaya, the method of the 6 perfections. So this is some thoughts on where the Sautrāntika fits in terms of the yanas. Bodhibhadra points to the Mahayana Sutra Lankara to understand the doctrine of momentariness, which is such a key component of the Sautrāntika view. Interestingly, that is not a Sautrāntika text properly. It's one of the Maitreya treatises. So usually it's understood either as a Yogacara treatise or as a treatise which is valid for all the Mahayana. And there are 10 verses in the Mahayana Sutra Alankara explaining why we have to accept that the Paratantra Svabhava is momentary. And in fact, among modern scholars, probably the first one to point out that that's one of the earliest and most important sources to establish momentariness was my teacher, Professor Ram Shankar Tripathi, in his MPhil and PhD thesis, which is called Sautrāntika Darshanam. So I hope that this offers comprehensible outline, let's say, of the Sautrāntika position. So I propose that now, maybe before going to the dedication of merit, I will take questions. So now, anyone who has questions, you can either unmute yourselves and talk if your microphone is clear enough, or you can write questions on the chat, or both. So I see there is question, if the Sautrāntikas don't accept uncompounded permanent phenomenon, how do they categorize selflessness? If by categorize you mean delimited to a smaller class of entities, well, they don't. They apply selflessness to all entities. If you mean how they explain selflessness, like how do they understand selflessness? Well, we could say in a way which is somewhat similar to the Vaibhashika. Oh, no, selflessness is not a functioning thing. It doesn't, because selflessness is not a thing. Selflessness is a property. It's not a property possessor, so it's not an entity. Selflessness is just a way to describe how things are. It's the dharmata, not the dharmas. So they wouldn't say that it produces its own effect, etc., etc. They wouldn't probably say that selflessness is real. They would say that it's a way of talking about how real entities are. So, in fact, even the Vaibhashika normally do not regard selflessness as a real existing entity. Some regard dependent arising, and maybe that goes close to it, but not necessarily selflessness. Okay, I hope you all, okay, welcome. So I hope you could follow the question, and I hope that the answer was understandable. Any other questions? If they don't regard the three times as existent, then when is nirvana? Well, nirvana is whenever there is the cessation of all the mental defilements. So in whichever moment all the mental defilements in that mind stream have ceased, that is nirvana. Yeah.
Professor,
Other questions?
I have one question.
You can also ask if you have doubts about the difference between the Vaibhashika and Sautrāntika, since we have studied both positions. If there's something you want to clarify about that. Okay, I see no questions so far.
I have one question.
If there are no questions, there is a question. Okay, maybe. Wait, I can hear someone.
I have one question.
Yes, I hear a very faint voice as well. But I don't hear it clearly. So probably if somebody is now asking a question, I would suggest that the person could write it, because yes, please ask in chat. I cannot hear. Somebody maybe had a question. If you have a question, please write it in the chat somehow. I don't know exactly why. Oh, maybe, let me see if I can solve that problem of the sound. Maybe. No, I do not know why. It's odd. But I do not see any other questions in the chat.
Can you hear me, Mattia?
Oh, someone else had a question. In the meantime, I can ask about the mind being affected by the object.
Oh, you can't hear at all.
Can you please repeat the difference between consciousness and awareness? Okay, so now we have two questions. The first question, the mind being affected by the object. Okay, maybe I understand what you mean. Let me try to answer it according to the another one. My question is about Dharmakirti, causal efficacy, and real and unreal among Indian tradition. Okay, so we have now a few questions. Let me start from the first question. Someone else, I can ask about the mind being affected by the object. So the mind arises not only due to the object. In order for a moment of mind to arise, there is a previous moment of mind, which is the immediately preceding condition. There is the sense faculty that functions as the basis, as the ashraya, so like chakshu, and there is the moment of the object. The special type of causal relationship between the object and the mind is such that the object doesn't just give rise to the moment of mind, but it determines how the mind is going to look like to itself. So for example, if the collection of atoms that makes up a table is the object that causes a moment of cognition, that moment of cognition is going to look as a table. It's not going to look like a bed. And so we know that we think that we have cognized a table. So that is the special way in which the object affects the mind. There is echo somewhere. Kindly mute. Okay, wait, I can do it. I can just do this. Okay, I hope that this answers the first question. I see 4 more messages. Okay. Then the next question is, can you please repeat the difference between consciousness and awareness? Now, this, of course, is just one choice of translation, which reflects the two terms vijnana and jnana. Let me see if I can go to the section where I have some quotes to explain it. So this is a very important theme. There are even entire treatises about how to distinguish this. I think there is an important one, for example, in the Kagyu tradition. Now, consciousness is the cognition of some object, of some point of reference. So consciousness takes up a point of reference. It needs a support. The word alambana, in order to explain it, sometimes it is said, is like when an old person needs a stick in order to support oneself and stand up. So in order to come into existence, in order to arise, consciousness needs a support, a point of reference. That is one of its main features, and in fact it is somewhat often defined as the cognition of an object. Awareness is the freedom of attachment from any object or point of reference. That's the main difference. What this includes depends also from the tradition that describes awareness. This type of description belongs mostly to the Mahayana, to Yogacara and Madhyamaka. So for example, for the Yogacara, that might mean, for example, that a moment of mind arises with many different aspects, many different configurations all together, appearing all together. But when there is no more concept of something to be perceived and the perceiver, then that is awareness rather than consciousness. That is a way in which the mind appears in harmony with its own nature. For some other yoga acharas, the real non-conceptual awareness doesn't even have any configuration. It's like the sky or like a clear crystal. For the Madhyamaka, there needs to be no trace of the concept of existence or non-existence. So when that kind of consciousness, sorry, not conscious, awareness, non-conceptual awareness, in order to be really non-conceptual, there must be no trace of even the very idea of existence or non-existence as a possible support or point of reference. So this is one way to understand the distinction. And in this movement from Vaibhashika to Sautrāntika, we are going more and more towards the type of awareness that Āryadeva, I think, believes to be the ultimate awareness. Okay, there were some other questions. My question is about Dharmakirti, causal efficacy and real and unreal among Indian traditions. Well, among Indian tradition, that becomes a very big question. Dharmakirti is the main interlocutor from his own time onwards, we can say, the main Buddhist interlocutor for non-Buddhist philosophers. And also Dharmakirti becomes influential for most Buddhist philosophers after him. So all those yogacharas who believed that the configurations are real, those who believe that they are not, as well as Madhyamakas, very often try to somewhat incorporate Dharmakirti's thought in their own philosophy. And therefore, the idea that causal efficacy somewhat determines at least conventional existence, let's say if we are in a Madhyamaka setting, becomes important for all these traditions and is also discussed very much by non-Buddhist philosophers who do not agree, obviously, because this goes really against the idea of the existence of a permanent self who has no activity, etc., etc. Okay, let me see if there are other questions. In Sautrāntika, does the karma only works on the mind? Where is the karmic cause stored? Okay. No, it doesn't only work on the mind. As an effect, it also determines the way the whole world is going to appear. So the Sautrāntikas, like other Buddhists, believe that it is the collective karma of sentient beings that at the beginning of each cycle of the universe causes the great elements to stuck and create the whole universe. Where is the karmic cause stored? In the Manovijnana, I think that some Sautrāntikas say in a kind of subtle form of mental or of thought consciousness. So there is one type of consciousness, one type of continuum of consciousness, which allows for the continuity of karmic bijas, of karmic seeds. That's how they explain it. And of course, this is, again, this doctrine goes a little bit towards Yogacara in the sense that some Yogacaras at least believe in the storehouse consciousness, which is the collection of all these seeds. Okay. Any other questions? If you have questions or further clarification on what I just said that was not clear, you can ask me. And of course, please do ask by writing it. Okay, I don't see anyone asking anything now. So maybe now we can do the dedication of merit, which is on the last page. Okay, we read this 3 times. Anena punyena tu sarvadarshitam avapya nirjitya cha dosha vidvishaha jararuja mrityu mahormi sankulat samudhareyam bhavasagarat jagat anena punyena tu sarvadarshitam avapya nirjitya cha dosha vidvishaha jararuja mrityu mahormi sankulat samudhareyam bhavasagarat jagat anena punyena tu sarvadarshitam avapya nirjitya cha dosha vitpishah jararuja mrityu mahormi sankulat samuddareyam bhavasagarat jagat. So thank you all, and probably tomorrow I will read the Yoga Achara, and I will send you the link. Well, I will put the link on the Facebook page, possibly tonight, and then tomorrow there's the 2 verses on Yoga Achara at the same time. So please consider it will be more or less at the same time. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you tomorrow.